this is BS. But who knows? Like, who knows?
Okay, another question. One more question. What kind do you actually think the government itself has a grip on what exactly is going on when Kirkpatrick says we know about them and confirms? Do you think he knows? Like, does anyone know specifics? And do you think that we're also working with uh NHI, like together with NHI?
Yeah. By the way, those are excellent questions. Like, I like to think that there are individuals that know, that truly do know. They may not know everything, but they do know what is supposedly going on. And whether you want to call them first hand, second hand, third hand, what have you. Now, Kirkpatrick's, like, you got to look at his history. Dating all the way back when he was in high school or something, and he created some invention that was reported in the newspaper. Did you guys see that in the local newspaper in his hometown before he went off to college?
Yeah.
Yeah, he developed something. Like, the guy is incredibly smart, and is also, if I'm not mistaken, is also a physicist as well. Um, and has supported a lot of different mission sets in different capacities over time, probably longer than 20 years as well. He may be a 30-year guy. If he was a senior executive service, SES, he probably or absolutely would be 20 plus years in service, in support. And he may have, and if I remember, he was one of the guys that would go public service, private, come back to public, and now he's going apparently back to private or whatever, or contractor. Like, he could, I don't have any information, but there is a very good possibility he could have been in the know. Whether he was either involved in a program, I don't, or just affiliated somehow. I mean, but there is certainly potential. Like, what do they call it? Like, his expertise would have been, I believe, someone they would have wanted. Just being a scientist. Like, that's one thing that he's really when he described the mission of Arrow, especially the resolution aspect of it. And he was constantly talking a lot of the technical sensor signature management. Like, he brings that up a lot, um, because he is extremely familiar with, uh, from what it sounds like, how to detect uh, this activity. So someone doesn't just stumble upon a situation like that. They just don't become an expert at this overnight. So the guy's got to have some background in this, whether that was private
Okay.
sector or public, DoD, what have you. But
Thank you, AKA. So, Evan, and then we'll go to Dove.
Hey guys, interesting space. Want to just kind of lay out some thoughts and then kind of pick your brains and see what you think. Um, I am by no means an expert on any of these, or the technicals, or the stories, or any of the hidden data that's maybe leaked out. Just give you a couple possibilities and my thoughts on, I think there's one that's, fun to think about and one that's not fun to think about. So the one that's pretty boring is, okay, well, it's just government craft and they're just experimenting in the airways and maybe a couple of civilians got hurt along the way and they're just covering up some lawsuits. That's the boring one, right? The more extraordinary one would be maybe it's something that's not us. Um, so my thought, I'm starting to hear a lot of people lean away towards the extraterrestrial kind of thought and more towards the interdimensional thought, as though they're either always here with us or they've been here for a very long time. And that's why you don't see them on Hubble, telescopes and sensors and things like that, right? But they occasionally pop in and out. It's like they pop in reality, they pop out of reality. And a lot of people seem to think that, they're more malicious than they are malevolent, right? I mean, not malevolent, just good. A lot of people lean more towards these things are more on the bad side than the good side, and I lean towards that too. So I'm just gonna kind of posit a thought, and this just comes from my worldview and my understanding. When you come in contact with a new group of people, or you come in contact with individuals that you've never met before, sometimes the best thing to do is to integrate yourself slowly over time, less that you don't become an enemy too quickly. Um, and humans are always looking for something to worship. Whether it's government, whether it's ourselves, whether it's sex, whether it's music, whatever. Humans are innately ingrained to worship something. If something wanted to come to us as a god and solve all of our problems, it would probably push society towards that direction where we would need somebody to come save us. And so my thought is it's just very simple. I think that they're just angels and demons. You know, um, I take it from a Christian worldview. If they're malevolent, what better way to come as a God to somebody to say, "Hey, I've got the answer to all your problems. I can solve societal problems. I can solve all of your issues. I'm smarter than you. I'm more intelligent than you. I'm more powerful than you. I've been working with your world leaders for a long time, or I've been showing myself slowly. Bow down and worship me." Think that would be. I think the more simple explanation sometimes is the best explanation. That's just my thoughts. Something
You
maybe
may be right.
an enemy that never sleeps, an enemy that's thousands of years old, an enemy that doesn't have to rest, that's way wiser than we are, that knows more about us than we do. Just a
Hmm.
thought.
It's a good thought. What do you think, AK?
Oh no, I mean, well, so I mean, and this is a big discussion point that's occurred, decade for millennia or whatever. Like,
All right, sorry to pump the brakes. We
sorry,
get
sorry about that. Yeah.
oh no, we get Jason Sands in the space. He claims to be the first-hand whistleblower. So if we want to give the floor to him, maybe we should go that route. Deb says no, no LARP.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Okay, I think Dove wants to ask a question, but Jason, do you want to chime in or not?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't normally do this, but been I've gone through all of my legal channels, including my publication approvals and things like this. So I'm planning on going public later in the year anyway. Figured I'd at least give you guys an opportunity to speak to me. I've had a lot of
Yeah.
other people saying things about me and all this kind of stuff, but I'd like to give you guys a firsthand talk so that you guys can ask some questions.
Do you want to go ahead and give us a rundown of your background and your story?
Yeah, sure. 22 years in the Air Force, retired in 2007. Started off as an airframe guy, cross-trained into Intel. Ended up at Nellis Air Force Base at my second tour of duty and got picked up for the program. After that, I got out of the program after about 3 years. Continued my career, became a planner, several other different jobs for the Air Force. I've been a contractor ever since. Just doing DoD contract work. I've been maintaining my clearance all the way through the career. When I started off as an Intel guy, I've kept it ever since. So I've had about 30 years. Various SAT-SAR programs, to include the one you guys are discussing, all the UAP things and stuff like that. So I've had a lot of different experiences in that. Plus, I do have some personal experience that I've also had with UAP and HI.
Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead. You can go ahead and mute your mic, and then we'll. I think UFO Mean Girls was next.
Yeah, wow. So I wasn't ready for that one. I guess I'll just continue with the question I had, and then I'll direct another question to Jason at the same time. So, well, both of you really, what was it? What went down in those forums and personally in the IC community when those MH370 videos resurfaced? And why hasn't there been anybody to come out and basically just state the fact that they're a hoax? Two, Jason, can you describe? Obviously, you heard about this space or you heard about the chatter. I can only assume that's through Steve and AKA and possibly other people. So there's a network there. Um, can you describe the program that you're talking about? Is it the program? Is it the program that everybody's looking for?
Yes.
Um, and what was your role? Like what exactly is it that you did or did you find, etc.? So those are the two questions I have.
Do you want me to go first? You want me to let the other guy answer part of the question?
Up to you guys. It's
Well,
all good to me.
okay. Well, I'll go first then. Yes, it is the program everybody talks about. It is a reverse engineering program, as David Grush had mentioned. The program does have vanilla side to it where, yes, we do have stuff that comes from different wars and adversaries and equipment that we're trying to reverse engineer or at least figure out, uh, just to defend our nation against some of the people that are out there. But then there's another smaller group of scientists and engineers working on this exotic material. My job, to answer that part of your question, was I was doing what it's called red teaming for the program, which is where I and a small team of individuals would go out from location to location all around the continental U.S., wherever they sent us. Um, we would go out and just monitor the telephones, uh, go in and out of facilities, trying to figure out where the security vulnerabilities were. Um, and then we would report that after our 2 week mission. We would report to the director or the leader of that particular organization, and they could invite whoever they wanted from their staff to come to that briefing. And then 90 days later, we would give our final report as to, here's what we have on your mission type. Here's all the information. So our team literally, unlike, say, people like Lazar or other people that may have come forward um, that had only a piece of the information, my team actually was listening to all of the scientists, all of the engineers, all of the leadership from mission to mission, listening to thousands of calls each time we went out. So we got a very good picture of what was going on in the entire program, unlike other people that are stovepiped into just one piece of it. So that was where my expertise came from.
So do you have an idea of the core story then? Seeing you're this close to the program, do you have an idea of what the core story is in terms of what we do know, or this inner circle seems to know?
Yes. What do you want to?
Which is
What
what?
what part of the core story? There's a lot of rabbit holes in that one. Some of them, some of them are not quite big.
Well, the core story meaning, right? If we establish that there's a there, right? I would imagine that the people are looking for or trying to find a consensus on the core aspects, which would be: has there anything been recovered? Has there been any sort of bodies? Do we know where they come from? Uh, and possibly, is there any sort of communication? So I think those are like probably the inner parts of the core story that at least like people like Kit Green and Put Up are getting consensus on. Um, and I would assume that someone this close to the program would know these things, or at least some of these things.
Yes, and then yes, um, on the missions we did intercept traffic that dealt with what I believed as an analyst, and the other guys as well that I was with uh, found very strange. And we would talk about those things, and some of those dealt with some of the other races that are involved. They were mentioned, like the tall whites, the grays. Yes, we heard things like that coming out of it. That there were certain labs that actually those that were participating in that kind of activity. So there must have been some sort of material retrievals as well involved. As a matter of fact, they tried to recruit me into the retrieval program early on, but I refused because I thought it was kind of gross, picking up bodies and things like that. Didn't like that. So when I testified, there were things that we went over in great detail that I can't talk about. Dealing with exact names and exact places, I can't go that far. So that I can just tell you that, in general, we're in my estimation, we're not alone. Yes, we do have some contact. How much of the reverse engineering is going on? I'm not a scientist, but I could tell you that I believe that yes, there at least has been some research over the past 80 years or so that the program's been alive. So take that as you would like. I went in as a skeptic myself. I didn't particularly care for it one way or the other, but after I got done with that, I just thought, what on earth did I just experience? And I've kind of felt that way ever since. So
Yeah.
that's
Jason, thank you for sharing that. Could you just one more sub point on that great question? What you learned about, I guess, the broad picture, the broad perspective, did it seem to supersede or go beyond our understanding of the scientific method itself?
yeah, I would say that the scientists themselves were quite frustrated in many cases. Um, they were, number one, stovepiped, and they couldn't talk to very many other co-workers, scientists that may have been working on something similar to help them to discover something about whatever they were looking at. And then there was this, like I said, this vanilla reverse engineering part of the program. The scientists were completely fine with researching and collaborating because it was stuff that had, say Russian writing on it or Chinese writing, and they could decipher that. Very obvious that it was an avionics pod and they were doing this with it or that with it. But this other stuff just was totally dumbfounding to the scientists and the engineers, and that's where, honestly, that as an analyst, I had to take note of that and realize that, hey, there's something else going on here. So
That was a great response.
Awesome. And if I could just get a response for the MH370 question from AKA.
Wait, about MH370?
AKA, if it's okay, why don't you go ahead and add on to whatever Jason just said based on the same question? Like, broadly speaking,
Okay.
do you think that what's going on supersedes our understanding of science or, I guess, reality, even in that sense? And then we'll circle back to UFO Mean Girls question.
Okay. Well, the first thing I want to do is just thank Jason for coming forward and disclosing this through. You went through the full process through. Was it ICIG or DoD or elsewhere?
I went first through the congressional whistleblower program under the NDAA of 2022.
Okay.
I was
Okay.
then told by some of my what I call friends now in Congress. They asked me to go to Arrow since they just newly stood up. So I got to meet Sean Kirkpatrick and interviewed with him. And again, that was all classified, the conversation I had with him. So I don't want to get too much detail on that. But I did go there. Again, underneath the veil of the NDAA. And then I was asked to go see the ICIG. So I followed all the same process. The only thing that was different between me and David Grush, whom I greatly respect for what he did. And anyway, but was that when we were doing the ICIG, I was not under a lot of duress like David was. I know he suffered a lot of different threats, but for me, the most I ever got was, some suspicious activity that kind of led me to believe that perhaps I was being monitored or watched, but nobody ever kind of bodily threatened me and things like this that David had happened.
Not yet.
I hope not. I'd like to think that I know the people in the program. I know they're still actively in the program, and they know me. They know I'm not a bad guy. I'm just trying to get to a better place in all of this. That's why I came forward. Yeah.
Hearts in the chat for Jason, real quick. I'm on the same page. Doesn't matter what your intent is. Some forces might harass you.
Well, I'd have to say that I guess just to tell you a little bit about my background coming forward as well. It's just that I think a lot of people found it. My rendition was kind of refreshing, but just that the reason that they found it refreshing was because I'm not adversarial. I understand the people in the program, and I know why they're doing certain things, and I also get why there needs to be a little bit better transparency on their part. But it's going to be difficult because they've since the beginning. You got to understand this was the McCarthy era that started this. Everybody was calling each other Russians and commies to their neighbors, and everybody didn't have a trust level that was really doable to be calling each other neighbors even at that time. So yeah, there was a lot of things and decisions that were made early on in the program that kind of, if you think about it, the program people are kind of in a bubble, and that culture is still kind of alive, and so that did cause some of the decisions that they made maybe need to be updated now because they've been around since the beginning. Uh,
Yeah, well, I'm going to reemphasize real quick. Thanks, Rob, for letting me co-host. But this is a quick reminder. I really do think this is the biggest story in human history. And so I'm not trying to blow any smoke up your ass. I don't even know who you are. I don't know who AK is or Steve. But
So are you the guy
if
that's
my
in the?
priors serve me correctly, I
Hold on.
honestly think you're gonna go down in history. Like just coming out and doing what you're doing right now, even though you're like 3 degrees removed, like you're a hero in my opinion. If you are who you say you are.
So Jason, let
What
me
was the
ask your.
earliest year the program started? Like, how far back does the program start? And again, we've had now like 4 or 5 IC people come in here to basically vouch for each other and this story, which again, I understand.
yeah.
But my question with why has there been so much silence with the MH370 stuff? If when that video resurfaced, there hasn't been an official statement by anybody one way or another. When the we're here for disclosure and transparency. But so that, and again, what is the earliest date, Jason, that you know of for the program in terms of when it might have started, and under what administration or under what even Air Force, was it under Vandenberg, Twining? Like, do you know when it started and what the organization handled that?
Yeah, I have seen some originating documents that state 1954 was like the official paperwork date, but I'm sure there was other things that happened before then. Whether they're documented or not, I do not know. I was not even born back then. But you're talking Eisenhower, Truman era kind of time frame. I do know that Holloman was also part of all that time frame as well. That is a place of some of the activity. That yeah, that's definitely a place that you could hang your hat on and do some research on. Um, so getting back to the MH, what did you say, the MH370, or that was also something you wanted to address?
Well, Jason, I've got a quick question for you. Were you in?
Yeah, no, what? So like, people have been relatively quiet about
Hey,
it.
real quick,
It came in full force, so I'm just wondering why has
UFO
everyone been
Mean
so quiet
Girls,
about that video, one way or
can we
another?
try to I don't know if he can hear me, but I want to try and center both AKA and Jason Sands, if that's okay. I don't know. Rob might disagree.
And can we get around to the hand?
Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah,
think
let's do that. We've had like.
UFO Mean Girls was up, but
Well, yeah, just let him
Yeah,
answer the question real quick, though.
yeah, go. Let's let him get to the question.
but
Kibble.
can you hear Jason? UFO Mean Girls? It doesn't matter.
I was, yeah, I
Just
hear.
okay. Drop out real quick, come back, and then you want to answer his question?
All right, so we heard. Is this the guy from the James Fox documentary? Is this who this?
Yes.
Is that who you are, Jason? Okay, perfect.
I'm exactly who that is. Yes.
Thanks.
So you're, just to be clear, you're the guy that Steve has been talking about, right?
Yes. Steve and I met back in 2021. He is correct in that it was in reference to the stuff that you've been talking about. And he called me because ever since I started to sort of help out with the task force, with some of my Black World expertise, I guess, to try to make sure that we weren't looking at videos that we already had in our inventory. And I was trying to tell people, hey, this is one of ours. This is not something we need to worry about. Let's spend our resources better over here on this unknown thing that we don't know anything about. So that's when Steve and I kind of connected, and he just, he's a really good guy. He was trying to just figure things out just like everybody else, just like I was when I first started the program. And yeah, he's just a really good guy. I actually talked to him today personally after hearing him on the show, and reconnected with him, and we had a really good conversation.
You talking about Courtney's show?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
but yeah, I felt bad that he had been through what he'd been through, but
Wow. Thank you for even, honestly, spaces are kind of a minefield. So thank you for just coming in here to talk with us. We haven't heard from David John Lanier yet.
Can I
So
can I answer the question though?
okay, go ahead. Yeah, UFO Mean Girls. Go ahead and rebut or whatever, and then we'll go to David.
Well, no, I mean, I've stated the question. I think AKA is more specifically suited to answer this, but again, you guys seem to come out in full force today for this, but with the MH370 stuff, like it's just been it's been dead silent one way or another. And if you've been part of this community, you've noticed that it's kind of been very divisive for a lot of people. I'm just wondering what it was like on your side and why, where do you stand, and why has there been no statement on it from anybody?
Jason, you got anything on that? Okay.
yeah, I do. Being part of the IC community, and still part of it. Hang on a second, I got somebody at the door. But yeah, it's been kind of.
Should we have AKA go and then you
Yeah,
can
let him
respond?
respond while I answer this.
AKA, what are your priors on the MH370?
Am I being put up live in space?
Yeah, I will just say I don't. I'll just do this. This is personal. Once again, this is my own uh, analysis of the video footage. Is absolutely been doctored up. As much work has been trying to, uh, you know, argue against that video footage is basically uh, untouched and completely native. I don't agree with that at all. That's all I really have to say about it.
Cool. No, that is a great answer. All right,
Yep,
thank you.
I'm back. But I agree. We've had a lot of my Intel folks that I know and I call friends, and they're all very well educated. They say the same thing, that this is something that's kind of on the fence of, well, the angles look good. The clouds are hard to replicate from multiple angles, as was in the videos. You guys have heard all the arguments, but there's always, a negative side to it, to where somebody that just really wants to spend that amount of time, and the current technologies, it's quite possible that it is a hoax.
Do you have any suspicions, either of you, James or AKA, that hoax wasn't just like someone in the public, but someone, or sorry, basically, do you have any suspicions that it was that hoax came from inside the government?
I doubt it, because you guys are giving the government too much credit as far as their visual effects skills.
Yeah,
That's
I would
fair.
doubt that they would spend the amount of resources would have been quite huge to do something silly like that, when really what was all that was needed was for us as a nation to respond to help in the search and rescue operation. Why would they concoct a governmental level UFO hoax?
Well, and years after the search even concluded, right? Sorry, it's a silly question. That was a big story,
Yeah,
but it's kind of irrelevant.
yeah. In my mind, it doesn't make sense that the government would have hoaxed it. It would have been somebody else hoaxing it, if anybody else. But
Right.
you know,
Thank you, guys. I think we need to go to David next, and then I believe J Just.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. I want to say hi to Linda real quick. Um, I'm a big fan. She's helped me out a lot, so I'm super anxious in these spaces for obvious reasons. But Steve invited me to his space yesterday, and I listened to it, and it kind of like reawakened my drive and interest in this subject, which is really um, NHI presence and intention. So, I've had a lot, quite a lot of personal experience with both the craft and the beings. I'm not going to get into my whole story. I know Linda can vouch for me. I've spoken with John Ramirez, Bob McGuire, all these, several people. So my question would be to the two that are in here who are part of the intelligence community, or I'm assuming, is there any recognition or understanding or awareness within this program or programs that the same craft that have been ascertained through whatever means are also being seen over people's homes, and some of the beings, because it's my understanding that there are several, it's not just one, are also being seen um, in people's homes, on people's properties, and um, you know, when discussions are had concerning quote unquote malevolent by our standards behavior by some of these NHI, who from the NHI are the perpetrators, and will that ever be broached officially? Thank you.
um, I can tell you that, at least in my estimation, because I don't know it for a fact, but I would say that yes, there is a faction that does have ill intent, or at least has a negative viewpoint of, you know, interacting with us. The other ones seem to be more kind of benign, where they're just begrudgingly uh, asking for different things from the program, and maybe even from other people around, that are claiming to be abducted or having experiences. There does seem to be a theme where they are interested in some cases our spiritual growth, our intellectual growth, and some of them have some very deep compassion for us and feel sorry for us in some cases. And yeah, because mankind can be quite messed up sometimes. So, but the malevolent, the ones that are maybe the ones that are evil minded, I guess, in some people's estimation. I've only heard it being from some kind of reptilian race, but I did not get exposed to anything that said anything like that in the program. But that's only something that's been in the public, so I can't verify that by any of my experience in the military.
Thank you. I want to say it was Chester, and then J Just, and then Chris, and then Experience.
Yeah, great. Okay. So in the community, there's this word, the phenomenon, which is by many of us considered to point to a basket of different aspects of this phenomenon. And in that basket, you could perhaps contain multiple different types of flesh and blood or biological beings, but also there could be what I've heard the term non-biological being tossed about. And my question only is, are all those on the table, Jason?
Yes, I would say that cloning, DNA manipulation, all of those things are in the realm of possible. From what I know of the program, those are all things that were part of the biologicals or biologics, and synthetics, even Android, all that kind of stuff. I would say artificial intelligence. All of those things are things that have been known for quite a long time and have been worked for quite a long time. So even the humans in the program, let alone the NHIs, I have no idea how far advanced the NHI themselves are in those things. I imagine quite further along than we are, but you can already see how it's affecting even our society. But within the program, they actually have other and even more advanced knowledge of some of that.
Okay, thank you. Then also to extend further, and I kind of try to get there, is there consideration that there could be beings or entities that are not anchored in physical reality, that they exist in another plane of reality, be there such?
I would say that outside of my military experience, but now that I've kind of been known by the IC community, I've been approached by many people that are experiencers that do have uh, testimony, and they're credible people as well, that they have seen some things that I would say that are very much like, uh, ghosts and interdimensional, all kinds of different things. It blows my mind, probably, and blows a lot of other people's minds, to just how many rabbit holes you can go down with this. But all of those things I have heard, and from people that I actually trust and are credible in my mind.
Okay, great, great. Well, then this kind of paints the picture of the dilemma that a government or governments would be in trying to share all of that with a lack of actually being able to explain much about it to the public. And so I kind of feel for their position. I understand it.
Yeah, and I would say that yes, that's something that I definitely heard in the program, was the struggle as to uh, their understanding as to what could be even divulged. I think for the most part, they always erred on the side of just keep your mouth shut kind of thing, because they didn't understand it themselves. In some cases, other times they did understand it, and there was a good reason for them to not say anything. Uh, One thing I did not agree with was that people are just going to lose their mind if we find out that we're not alone. I think that's kind of a farce. I think that's if you got 70 or 80% of our society, as well as other nations around the world, that believe we're not alone, I don't think that's going to shock anybody. I do believe, though, that there's going to be some consternation with Christianity and other religions, because the way I look at it is, when it comes to religion, I just happen to see the reality of it, because if you open the Bible, you can actually read of you know some of the firsthand witnesses that are in the Bible as well, stating some of the same exact things that I was seeing. Uh, so I think when you talk about, I think somebody mentioned something about angels and things like this earlier on, that yeah, that could probably be interpreted as part of the experience as well. So very much something where I don't understand it all. I'll be honest, with everybody here in the audience, that I just I've heard some very strange things, but they are coming from very credible people.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm done. I just want to say thank you uh, for all of that, because I'm in the camp that kind of views all possibilities as something to be open-minded about. And the angel demon aspect, I can get that and understand that, but I do not think that that would be the whole basket. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so you talked about the beings. Uh, there's like lore that we're working with these beings. Is there any truth to that?
Yes, I would characterize it also. I know you didn't ask this, but yes, there were instances where we did capture traffic where there were interactions in the labs. Um, they didn't want to be around the humans. They shunned it. So to me, that led me to believe that it's kind of a tenuous relationship. In other words, they don't like sharing any technology with us. Why would you give a monkey a pointy stick, kind of a thing? I think is what the way they look at it. Just as we would not do that, to a tribe in, say, South America that is just still hunting and gathering. Why would we hand them, an AK, 45 and say go out and hurt yourself? So I think that's very much the same way in the program. So it's not like a full-on technical exchange where they're giving us tons and tons of things. I think it's much less than that. I think it's kind of just helping us to figure things out that they think are not going to harm us.
So we're actually having interaction with these beings, like programs, is what I'm asking.
Oh,
You think,
that
yeah.
I would say maybe from our standpoint, there may be a program. I don't want to talk about that if it's classified because it probably has to do with something that we would be working on. But there was nothing classified about NHIs at all, ever. Um, but I would say from the NHI standpoint, um, that they probably didn't view it as a program, that it was just something that they were like, well, let's see if we can help these scientists and not cause any more harm or damage than has already been done. Because I think a lot of times we tend to just take whatever we're given and weaponize it.
So they were guiding the scientists to do the right thing with whatever technology they
Right.
had from other species as well.
Yeah, I would say so. That would be kind of my take of it. Yeah, that kind of fits what I was hearing and understanding.
And do you think that Congress is going to have another um, like, are we going to hear any more from Congress about this after the James Fox movie?
Um, Possibly. I know I've been asked that question a number of times. I've not heard anything solid, but they I've heard other announcements made by congressmen over the past few months that they do want to get some firsthand people to come forward. At least the ones that are advocates for disclosure want that.
Well, is
Uh,
this the route that people are taking now? Like like you said you talked to Arrow. I'm curious about that. Like what your impressions are of Arrow. Do you think now, and you've just come out on Twitter today, about an
mhm.
hour ago. So I wonder, like, is this the route that you think whistleblowers are going to take now on Twitter? Because it does seem strange that the past 24 hours, all of the people who have come out and sort of like supported this, and then you look at Arrow and what they're doing and what they've said and the perception from whistleblowers in the community. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Yes, I do have my opinion about my interactions with Arrow and the last report that came out. I believe the last report is what people said. It was pretty sloppily kind of written in the first place, and I do agree with that. For a congressional level report that had a lot of errors in it. Um, Knowing people in the community also, like Ramirez and the rest of those guys that have some real experience, I would say that, yeah, you've got some. If you look at that report and you hear some of the no kidding people that have been in the trenches for many years, journalists included, that did the hard work in the investigations, that reports, if they really, really did their due diligence on a whole, uh, archive of UAP data and events, that it was a very poor rendition of all the things that we've known, even from Project Blue Book and all the other things that came before. It kind of just, to me, it just doesn't sit well. Um, And I'd say it kind of fits what Sean likes to do. He's a very good scientist, but I think when it came to the investigative work with the whistleblowers that came his way, I think maybe investigation wasn't his strong point. So that being said, I wish that, or I'm hoping that Congress does continue the investigation, because I think that's the part that really needs to happen. Because it's one thing to have a scientific opinion, and you can already see just from people arguing back and forth about all sorts of different scientific things in academia. You've got one guy being paid to come up with one theory, and they are arguing with another person that's got another theory about where the data is pointing. So it's to be given that Sean would say the things he said. He wasn't in the program like I was. I'm kind of disappointed, because I'm like, that's not what I said. If he were to take me at my word, I would have said that he kind of didn't do me justice in that report either. So that's just my opinion.
Appreciate it. And let's get around to the hands too. I know we got a bunch up. I know Chris, and then Experience, and then Matt, and then Tom. Thanks, guys. And saw Green Street jumped up too. What's up?
Okay, hey, your name's Jason, right? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I came in kind of late, so I know that you were talking about. I think I heard about a reverse engineering program potentially. Can you just kind of give me a brief history of kind of like your introduction and what you stated? And I just got a couple questions after that, if you don't mind. But yeah, just kind of tell me the gist of everything, because I missed that part.
Yeah, all I stated was just that, yes, there is obviously a reverse engineering program, just like every other nation on Earth does. If you capture an enemy aircraft or tank or some new technology, you're going to grab it and you're going to try to reverse engineer it. You're going to do all that stuff. So yes, there is a reverse engineering program. However, when I was doing my line of work, which was to go out and do the red teaming, we actually were intercepting phone calls and things like this between site to site, scientist to scientist, engineers, leadership, and they were all they would talk about those, kind of adversarial things that were captured from like China, Russia, whoever. And they would be talking about that in one light, but then there was a small cadre of things that and scientists that were discussing stuff that seemed to be totally foreign and from someplace else, that they couldn't even decipher the language that was written on some of the parts. That there was these parts operated in such a way that it didn't make any sense to their scientific background and what they'd learned through school, and just a complete frustration on some of the scientific and engineering parts. So that's all I said about any kind of reverse engineering.
Gotcha. So I'm an Air Force veteran myself. So you were in the Air Force, correct? Is that what I understand?
Yeah, 22 years, retired in 2007.
Awesome. Thank you for your service. I actually was in during that time. So I just wanted to ask, can you share what your MOS was, or what your
Oh,
title was in Air Force?
I was a 1N6.
Okay, so you're an intel.
That's correct.
Do you know? Are you able to say what department or what specific job in intel or?
It was initially telecommunications, security, um, and then we merged into another. I think it was 1N8 career field or something, or 1NO was also another thing they merged into. But they still kept the telecommunications security um, and monitoring program underneath the umbrella of those particular AFSCs.
Gotcha. So you were in basically crypto and signals,
Correct.
correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so I missed the part of where you, I guess. So how did you, or did you just intercept communications, and that's what you were talking about? What's kind of the gist of what you're whistleblowing about? I guess it's a good question.
Um, the concern has to do with some of the things that were going on at the time, where there is some craft that I knew were in our inventory, and they're kind of regularly reported as UAP. And some of the activities I started seeing was coming out in these stories in Indonesia mainly that caused me some concern that there was some contraband or even other sorts of things that were being exchanged from the inside of the chassis of this craft, or the cargo bay, whatever you want to call it. Um, and it raised some hackles in my book. And I thought to myself, this looks an awful lot like something I already know about, and I wanted to make sure that things were still on the up and up. So I had some concerns, and as I was saying earlier in this particular, when I got talking here on this particular Twitter, um, or on this particular podcast, that those concerns are things that I wanted to bring forward, not in an adversarial way, because I was part of the program. I know why they do what they do, but um, I'm not here to get anybody, in trouble or put people in jail. I'm just saying, hey, if the culture has changed to the point from, when I knew it in the 1990s into something where they're utilizing some of these uh, really cool craft for things that are questionable, that needs to be looked at. And all I've asked Congress to do is please just investigate this. I don't want to put people in jail or anything, but if you can get some kind of oversight in this is why I believe there needs to be a little bit more transparency. Maybe not public transparency, but at least in a classified sense, to where at least Congress can keep the oversight that they need to, and get the reassurances that the technologies are being used for the intended purpose.
We're not getting like nothing burgers and shit on these skiffs. Yeah. All right.
Right.
I want to throw it over to Experience. You got your hand up. What's up, dude?
All right. What's up, y'all? What's up, Jason?
Okay.
Sounds like 22 years. Sounds like you got a lot of wisdom in your voice. OG, you've seen a lot of things. So if you are the one that's going to be in this upcoming James Fox. Is this the one where you had an interaction with an actual blue bang, or is that somebody else?
No, that you're correct. I still don't know what it was. I think the Intel community, when they saw me give that rendition, it was just a trip up to the work site to do training, totally outside of my duties. We were just on our way up
Okay.
to Black Mountain for the day to train air crews, and that was all we were doing. And this event occurred. But you guys will get to hear all that in James' film. I don't want to. I don't want to
Yeah,
say.
I don't want to give away too many details. If you can, I understand that. That's fine. So my question to you is then your exposure to this, or the initial exposure, is you doing intel
Yeah,
work, intercepting calls, listening to some of these scientists riff about stalled progress and what they're trying to study or research or reverse engineer.
yeah.
Is that your first exposure to this? And did your encounter happen afterwards? Like how would you say how much exposure do you think you've had to the phenomenon?
Um, it's kind of been something that's followed me around most of my life. I just, as a kid and a young adult, I would say that the instances I had of encounters were just kind of UFOs and golly gee whiz, what was that I just saw? And then I just tuck it away and not think about it at all. I've never really had an interest in UFOs, really. I've maybe read one book in total out of in my entire life. The rest of it has just been stuff that people have thrown at me since I've been kind of in the intel community, and they know who I am. They ask me questions about stuff, and so I kind of get read up on things from that. Um, but that's kind of the most exposure I have. But the encounter I'm going to, or you guys are going to be seeing in the film that's coming, um, is just after I was exiting that program, and
Okay,
so
that's
I
interesting.
had been,
Thanks.
yeah, I had been fully read in up until that I guess earlier that year, and then I was going up range, and that happened. The encounter.
Okay, so the reason you're being read in is because part of your job is to track or trace these calls. So you're already exposed to the information, so they have to read you in. Is that how it works?
Well, reading in is another thing that people ask me about constantly. I only had one read in, and it was the umbrella program. In other words, I can go anywhere in the United States, and as long as I had a legitimate mission reason to be at a given location and plugging into the telephone lines, I could listen to whatever program was there, so I wouldn't have to get a read in. So let's say like I go to someplace in Arizona 1 week, I wouldn't have to be read in necessarily to any programs they had down there. Now, the people that worked in that facility would have to, and they could have any number of different compartmented SAP programs that they had to get read into, but I did not.
Okay, cool. I'll let somebody else go. Appreciate you answering the
Yeah, no
questions.
problem.
Thank you, guys. I also shared estimate of the situation. Has got a GoFundMe campaign. Shared it up above. Everybody, please support that. It's got a couple days left. Support the community. Matthew, what's up, man?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Jason, for being here. Experience rather. Took my first line of inquiry was I wanted to confirm that you were in fact the guy Steve was talking about, who posted on the internal intel forum about the encounter with the blue being. So I guess we got that covered. Looking forward to hearing more about it. Next, I want to go to, I hear what you're saying. It's about some of the things that were raising your concern and brought you to come forward. It sounds to me like some of the Michael Herrera type account, that sort of thing, is what may be is kind of instilled in you the commitment, willingness to come forward. Is that a fair way to characterize what was of concern to you?
Yes, that, and just the fact that I had some exposure to the program. I think mainly the task force at the time, back in 2021, 2022, when they started to introduce me to Congress and other folks. The concern mainly was just that they knew I had been in the program, and that this was something that, quite frankly, is hard to penetrate, even as a congressman who needs to get oversight. And I have to say that even when I was giving my testimony at Congress, they asked me about the program name. I gave it to them, and they were like, I don't know what that is. And I thought that was kind of shocking. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with that. But yes, I do know Steve as well. He and I kind of connected back in 2021, as I said earlier in the program.
That's fascinating. Thank you. So my next line of inquiry is, I think, I asked that because it's good, in my opinion, assessing someone like yourself. This is all such a wild west of accounts and information. It's hard to believe, and that's why so many people struggle. So understanding what someone's motivations, I think, are central to being able to ascertain and with discernment what they have to say. So thank you for that. But my next thing, a respectful, not pushback, but just I want to frame something, posit something to you from, like, you're the first most inside person probably I've ever spoken to one-on-one. So I want to know is, like, I've been looking for you. Where have you been? And where's everybody else like you? Like, whether the grounds to, this stuff warrants oversight. It's not constitutionally sound. Great. There's some illegal funds and budgeting stuff going on. Great. But I'm thinking more broadly, more philosophically. My mind goes straight to, if I had this kind of insight, that there are people in positions of power that understood more about the nature of our existence and reality, and were withholding that from our fellow man. To me, that's like the highest of high crimes. It's like locking a small child in a closet and thwarting and retarding their development and robbing them of the experience to grow up with full access to the world around them. That's like doing that on a planetary scale to me. So I don't know if that resonates with you or makes sense, but I always struggle with this. Like, if this stuff is true, where is everybody else on the inside who gets that? Like, I'm ready to hear from them. So it's not a criticism, but it's more just like of a conundrum for me. So how does that strike you? Does that make sense? And maybe where is everybody else? And maybe, are we going to hear from them too?
Well, I can't speak for them. Right now, we're going through a bit of the rules of the Fight Club is that you don't, tell somebody about Fight Club, because everybody's not quite sure how this next round is going to end up, or this year is going to end up. For me, I can answer your question, at least from my point of view as a whistleblower, but I don't speak for all the other ones, other whistleblowers, that is. I agree with you that uh, the fact that NHIs exist is a given right for anybody in mankind to believe or not believe, honestly. And I think that's the travesty here is that I get the part about the national security and that if it has something to do with a weapon system, we don't want our enemies to know about what we have in our inventories. I get that. That has to be classified. However, are we alone or not alone? Uh, uh, that is something I think, like you said, is kind of a travesty that can't be spoken of. That hey, um, that we do have other peoples out there and other civilizations. That should be something out there for everybody to know, because I think it gives better context for what is really going on here on Earth. Because I think the mantra has always been that we're alone in this vast universe. Even though statistically speaking, I've heard from mathematicians that it's really astronomically untenable to a certain point, that to think that as many stars as we've already recorded that are out there, that there's absolutely nothing out there really. I think that's becoming less and less an arguable point as we've moved forward and gotten a little bit smarter about the universe itself. So yeah, I'm with you. I wish that the things that I've heard could be a little bit. I'd love to walk this walk. Let me put it this way: I'd love to walk this walk with somebody else and not be alone in this. But I've been alone ever since I started coming forward, and I don't like that feeling. But I'm hoping that some other people that may be listening that are like me, that they realize that this might be our only time in this lifetime to get this right and get to a better place. Because I've said before, I don't want to be adversarial. I get why the program people are like the way they are. I get what the everybody else wants is some kind of disclosure, at least to admit we're not alone. That at least that one fact would be okay to put that forward. It's not going to create any problems. I don't see any real problems coming from that.
But on its face, Jason, that sounds like provocative and exciting, but I think it does probably go ultimately back to what Elizondo said, where it's kind of sobering, or it makes us like somber, because like this is so big, what you're talking about right now. And
I agree.
you know what? I'm just gonna go against my instincts real quick. I shouted your praises earlier in this space before I even realized who you were, but I really do think you and AKA and Steve, anyone who's actually who they say they are, and they're coming out and talking about this, you're a hero. I mean, that's huge. This is massive.
Well, thank you. I also believe it's very huge. I would like to say also that I feel like I'm a normal guy. I just got exposed to some really strange stuff, and just like you guys going into seeing things like I have, you go through that, and yeah, I got a very profound feeling of after I finally figured it all out and tried and came to my own understanding about what I'd seen and heard, that yeah, this is kind of really thought provoking for mankind. If everybody had this same kind of experience, yeah, it should mean something to you and something to everybody, that just knowing that we're not alone in this universe is a big thing, honestly. And I totally agree with you, because it changes the mindset that we have about ourselves.
Look, I'm just gonna say this real quick and then shut up, because this is a great space. Thanks, Rob. But for real, I can't even figure out how to talk about what I experienced just with my stupid little network. But you're in the government, so it's got to be even weirder. It's just a totally whole new ball of wax. So thank you again for speaking out.
Yep. Well, I was planning on going public later in the year, honestly, but I heard some good discussion going around tonight.
Well, it's awesome that everybody's listening in, and we appreciate you with the discussion, Jason, for real, coming forward and talking to us tonight. No doubt, there's a lot of questions and a lot of people that want to jump up and ask questions. So, respectfully, let's get around. I know Tom had their hand up, and then Skyfire jumped in as well. What's up, Tom?
Astral, my friend, thank you so much. Jason, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here tonight, and thank you for your service. Just two pretty basic questions. The first one may seem silly, but I feel like it's still a question that kind of bridges the gap between, say, my camp, the experiencer, and then the other camp of people who don't really think anything's going on. I would like to hear you speak about the elusivity of this phenomenon. Why is it that it's so difficult to capture concrete evidence of it, whether it be photographs, samples, any type of evidence that you can think of? And why does it seem that the military slash government has the ability to do that more so than the average citizen? I mean, like, I have my own answers for that question, obviously, but I'm curious to hear your take on that. And then I guess my second question is a pretty simple one. Is it discussed among your, the network that you're a part of, the people that you speak to that have had links to these programs and maybe have seen things that are pretty extraordinary? Is there a prevailing notion amongst them that we were perhaps created by these forces, where our religions may be a result of interaction with these intelligent forces around us? I appreciate your time, man. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I would say that within the program itself, that the thought of, I guess, what other people would think are like ancient history for us, like in the Mahabharata or what's mentioned in the Bible, are probably the only really things that have documented any eyewitnesses that have had some of the similar experiences we're having today, but they're doing it in a sense of a religious thing or theme. Um, and when you look back on that, it kind of touches on your first part of your question, where, why aren't what are the NHIs doing? What is their agenda? Your guess is kind of as good as mine, but if we take what things we do have uh, that speak of this contact that's gone back probably, in my mind, at least 2 millennia or more, um, there is a theme there, and they don't like to, be known all the time. It's almost like this was where we were meant to be, that we're indigenous to this planet. They are not. They come and go. Sometimes they seem to have, even in today's, encounters from people, they say that some of them come with messages. Some people say that they leave them with, a nightmarish sort of experience. Um, and how you parse all of that, your guess is kind of as good as mine. I like to think that uh, the encounters that I have had were all very, good. I didn't ever have a nightmarish experience. I think sometimes people that do have nightmarish experiences are, maybe it's a sort of a uh, misinterpretation of what's going on because they're in a strange place. And yeah, just like you're scared because it'd be like looking at something that a monster sitting in your room, because some of them look very strange. So that's kind of my take on all of it. But the standoffishness, I think, from the NHIs is a telling that maybe they don't want to interface with us because they don't want to stop us from finding our way forward on our own. Because it would seem to me that, if they are as unique as they seem to be from these encounters, because you've got people that tell you all these different races have come here and all of them seem to have a totally different take on things, um, that perhaps all of them were given a chance to find their own way through, and become a unique society and civilization of their own. Maybe they have respect for that, and that maybe they're just waiting to see what we become. That's the best I've got on any kind of a theory as to the overall NHI presence and why they're not totally involved with us all the time.
Thank you so much for taking the time to answer all of our questions tonight, Jason. Really deeply appreciate it, especially being that I am an experiencer and have a very different perspective on this than someone who has never seen anything. It's very brave of you to come forward, and we're rooting for you, man. Seriously, this is a good place for you to be. There's a lot of great people here, and we are hoping for the best, man.
Yeah, well, thank you. And I did want to tell everybody in the audience as well that, I'm in a very precarious year right now. And I find it, well, one of the reasons I'm motivated to talk tonight is just because I want to give you guys the opportunity to talk to me directly because I've been hearing a lot of different theories because people just don't know. And I want to make sure that the path is as solid as I can make it going forward because I want to help Congress eventually. Hopefully later this year, I'll get to have an opportunity to speak with them as well. And actually have more public appearances. That's what I've been working on this past couple of years. Matter of fact,
Dude, and I honestly think this gains more respect to come on and do that. Like coming on and being transparent and taking questions like this. So we'll keep it going. We got a bunch of hands up. So thanks again, Jason. Skyfire, and then Stephen Greenstreet got his hand up too. So we'll jump around to the room.
okay.
What's up, guys? All right, sweet. Thank you, Jason. Red for Skyfire News. Can you speak a little bit more about this forum that we're hearing people talk about, where it sounds like UAPTF people are there, speaking about UFO-related matters? And is there anything in the public domain that you think people should look into, or that you felt was validated as a result of information you learned in that forum?
In the forum, I would say that yes, I totally respect everybody that has contributed and everybody in their expertise levels and whether they agree or don't agree with UAP. It's been fantastic, honestly. I love hearing both sides of it. And at the same time, what is it? Well, are you looking for something in particular about what it's telling us? Because I don't know how to address that part of your question.
Any cases or anything in the public that you felt like extra validated? I know when we asked the previous guy the Wilson Davis memo, so anything like that's already public that you felt
Oh
people
yeah.
thought had credence?
Well, I can tell you that in the forums that yes, that the Wilson memo definitely was it had arguments for both for and against it. I am for the fact that yes, that memo is correct, and it does sound very genuine to me. And I've been asked several different times in several different ways about it. And being an analyst myself, I think it's legit. That's my opinion. I'm welcome to my opinion. You can disagree with it or not. And even my friends, we sometimes disagree, but that's good to debate it because sometimes the truth is outed that way. But for right now, I've heard the arguments both for and against, and I think that yeah, the Wilson memo is legit.
Nice. All right, Stephen. What's up? I'll go ahead. Throw it to Green Street. We got a bunch of hands up too. What's up, man?
Jason, thanks for taking questions. Is Jason Sands your real name?
Yes.
Okay. And I joined late, so if you shared this information, I apologize. You were part of the UAP task force?
Yes.
Okay. From when were you part of the UAP task force?
From 2021 until Arrow stood up.
Oh, okay. Wow. So were you there? You weren't there when Jay Stratton was there.
I think if he was there, it was just that first year I was in there.
Yeah, because he left January 2021. So you served with Brennan McKernan?
Yeah.
Okay, with Brennan McKernan. Okay. I spoke to a few UAP task force analysts, some of which you probably also worked with. I won't name them, but a few of them spoke about the hitchhiker phenomena. Are you familiar with the hitchhiker phenomena?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Over there at Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah.
Okay, and they had personal experiences with the hitchhiker phenomena. Have you had any personal experiences with the hitchhiker phenomena, or are you familiar with anyone close in these programs that have experienced a hitchhiker?
I have not. However, I do have some friends that have. Yes.
Okay, and then interesting. Okay, and then you mentioned the blue alien or the blue entity. But you stopped yourself short from getting into too many details, saying that we would have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Wait and see for what?
Well, it's just I know James Fox. I go over all that in James Fox's film. I don't want to spoil it for him or you guys. And that's
Uh,
I'm holding back is because I know he's working real hard on it. So
okay, so for a movie, okay. And then, is there a reason why you decided to be a whistleblower on Twitter Spaces rather than going to like the Washington Post or mainstream media?
Well, this one, well, those are all possibilities of, to do all those kinds of things. This one seemed to be a good discussion tonight, and I wanted to be part of that because it seems that there's been a few other times when my name has been mentioned. I felt bad that I couldn't participate at that time because I was still going through my DOPSR process, which is your pre-publication thing.
You still can. Like, this is an opportunity for you guys to connect and make an article for the Washington Post. Like, you guys can fucking, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
here it is.
correct. And that's the whole thing, is that, the opportunity is always there, but I'm not a glory seeker or anything like that. I've just wanted to set the story straight. I'm working towards my retirement just like everybody else, and I feel
Are
like
you
this is the only time. This is the generation where I've seen all the celestial bodies kind of aligning on this topic,
Mm. Are
and
you
I
still
don't.
in government? Are you
Yeah,
still in? You are still in government. Oh, okay. I
yes.
did not know that. Okay, you're still in. So, what agency are you in?
I'd like to leave them out of that. Because my employer knows that I am a whistleblower, and I promised them that I wouldn't mention them at all
Eh,
because I don't want to do that.
Uh, okay. What's the best piece of evidence you have to support the story you're telling?
Um, I guess it's just that I've been verified through Congress, Arrow, the ICIG. You can still get into the systems and see what I was read into. Yeah, I've been to the places I've said I've been. Um, People have looked up my medical records, up my yin yang, and all of them have said, yeah, he's who he says he is. That's the best
Okay.
evidence I can tell you, is that that's there. I'm not going to carry out. I've never carried a UFO on my back, if that's what you're getting at. That's an impossibility. And being able to drop it like in Sean Kirkpatrick's lap, I couldn't.
So you know where they are,
Please
right?
do.
Do you know where they are? Do you know where the UFOs
Yeah, he
are?
spoke with
I
Arrow.
have a good
Yeah,
idea, but
he
they
was.
could have moved them since then. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for taking my questions.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. I know. Go ahead, Kimmel.
I just was curious to know from Jason or Steve why they felt the need. I mean, did this all culminate with Steve's story with Courtney, or was it actually Courtney's story that I know she said she was in contact? The NSA basically reached out to Courtney because of your story,
Yeah.
and she eventually had a space with Steve, and
Yeah.
I've talked a whole bunch with Steve over the past 48 hours, but I just am wondering what's causing you to come forward right now when you are.
Well, I'm a thoughtful guy. I'm also a somebody who's approachable, and I do listen. I've known Courtney for quite a bit now. I think since about New Year, I've known her. We've talked, and she's visited me here where I am, and we get along pretty good. And I've always intended to talk to her, some other really great people like Leslie Kane and James Fox, and you know Chris Mellon, all these really great names and stuff like that. I'm very honored that they're all out there doing great work. But since New Year's, when saw that little video of James Fox with my name on the clapperboard, uh, I've been wondering myself that I know I'm working towards publication, but I don't have that yet. But I just got that approved through the DOPSR program last month. So
Wow.
I couldn't let Courtney or Leslie Kane or anybody else run with the story, or Colt Hart or Jeremy Corbell or anybody else that would be interested in that sort of thing. I just really wasn't ready. But this is the month where all that is taken care of. I've got all my legal blocks gone through. I've gone through Congress, the whistleblower program, like I said earlier. I've gone through the ICIG. I've been through Arrow. I've done all of it. I've done everything by the numbers, just like David Grush did. So
Jason, I'll just say it again, man. sir, like, thank you for doing what you're doing. I know this is crazy, I'm sure, on
Yep.
your end.
Yep. Well,
No, that was a good explanation, I think, of why, because a lot of people are wondering, even myself, of why Twitter Spaces. I think Steven asked it too, of like why Twitter Spaces, why we're at now. But if this were the honestly, like Spaces, if this were the avenue, this is the people who are in the forefront and studying the topic and really up to the game of what's going on.
mm-hmm.
So appreciate it again. We'll go around to the room. I know Experience, and then Chris, and then Danny Silva. What's up,
All
guys?
right.
All right. So thanks again, Jason, for this. So I just wanted to nail down something here as far as the act of why you're whistleblowing. You ran intelligence or telecommunication
Mm-hmm.
intelligence. You heard something that alluded to a craft that you possibly have familiarity with that was overseas and potentially some nefarious or contraband being moved, which is a big no-no and bad thing if it was happening under people's nose. Is that what you're whistleblowing on essentially?
Well, that's what raised my hackles, and I knew I had to come forward at that point because when I was in the program in the '90s, early to mid '90s, uh, that was not on the horizon. I had never heard any of the program equipment or vehicles being used for that sort of thing, and here was something that honestly raised my hackles, and that's why
Gotcha.
I was concerned. That's why I went forward.
Okay, thank you for that. The other question I would have is, there's been release of some program names that are you can't specifically say it was reverse engineering. The Kona Blue thing came out. If that was just a proposal, are there names that you are aware of that are not out in the public right now that you were familiar with potentially being connected to those programs?
Um, Kona Blue, I didn't even know of that one, honestly. But it makes sense to me that the Department of Homeland Security would be a good uh, agency to handle the sorts of things you'd have to do if you did have material that, say, crashed in one of the continental United States, because you've got to have some sort of an agency that can work with the legislatures and the local, law enforcement and everything else to do a retrieval, let's say, in any given state here in the United States. The Department of
Right. It
Homeland
was just a
Security is the only one.
proposal, and it never got
Right.
moved under DHS. Right. It got
So,
denied. So, but are there any
right.
other programs that you are familiar with that has not been publicly like
Oh,
stated out
yeah.
there? That
Shoot.
okay.
Yeah,
So,
I've been read into hundreds of different programs that I can't speak of, but yeah, they all have their own program names that are not ever divulged in public.
gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you, man. Appreciate you answering my questions. Also, I will just state, you coming out is definitely bold. But I will also say, just prepare yourself because you are going to get scrutinized, and all your background is going to be looked into. Just stay strong. If you believe in the truth and what you're saying is the truth, then we appreciate that.
Yeah.
Bringing some light to something that's very serious.
Yeah. Well, I've been preparing for 2 years. Like I said, I've already got all my legal ducks lined up. And as for the backlash, I've already dealt with quite a bit already. So,
Thank you, Jason. And
Gotcha.
guys, Experience 703. At Experience 703. I trust this guy. Give him a follow. We've got a lot of requests coming in. And again, Jason, thank you for being here and just let us know when you need to check out. But we are going to start cycling some people out so we can get some people requesting up here. So shoot up your hand if you're a speaker now. But for now, Danny, go ahead.
Hey, Mr. Sands, thank you for stepping forward. It's real big for us, and it means a lot. We saw last year, David Grush came forward. It was amazing. It was farther than the UFO topic has ever been with the hearing. We also saw what it didn't accomplish, at least to this day. We don't have quote unquote full public disclosure.
yeah.
What are you planning to do to either take it further than David Grush or do differently? Or are you kind of just going by that same game plan where you're going to be trying to convince Congress to look in the right ways? Because we need that public, that public proof, quote unquote, if that's possible, or just what's the plan for that?
Well, to be honest, the one thing I was hoping, and I offered to Congress and the ICIG and even Arrow in the investigation, was I offered to them. I said, "Look, I can walk you into these places if you need me to, but I'm sure you've got other whistleblowers that could do the same because." Matter of fact, some of the other whistleblowers probably have even more recent information about the program than I do. If you look at me amongst the others, I'm probably more like the 1990s history expert, and they have other stuff to add to what's happened since the 90s. But I would like to see action, honestly. But it seemed like we just didn't get to that point where, from at least my point of view, I was hoping they would ask me for that kind of help. That hey, let's go walk out to this particular location and let me try to show you where I worked and all this kind of stuff, if that's going to help. I'd also like to reach out to some of the guys that I knew in the program and tell them, hey, it's okay, you know me, I'm not a bad guy, I just want to make sure you're okay, that the program is on the right path. You need to say something. You can't just keep using the cover story and not saying something. We're in an era right now where there's been a lot of other people that's aside from me that are coming forward, and all the whistleblowers seem to be of the same theme, that something is happening that needs to be looked at, and that can't be good, because if you've got what David was saying and other people have been saying, if there's 40 credible witnesses that hold clearances and are verified, just as I am, that's probably the largest contingent of credible witnesses and insiders all saying the same thing. That should speak volumes to this nation, and should speak volumes to the Congress. That doesn't just happen, because I don't even know who these other whistleblowers are. How could we all, not knowing each other, come up with the same sort of problems and concerns? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, definitely it does. So basically, is this going to be, and I'm kind of boiling it down here, the more whistleblowers getting speaking on the same things, um, you think will convince Congress more and more, rather than it just being only David Grush or only David Grush and you?
Well, yeah, I think it's necessary though, because I think, like it or not, David did a great job, by the way, and I totally respect him and Fravor and Ryan Graves. Those guys are great. I mean, they did a fantastic job breaking the ice on this. But I think the one thing the public really wanted to see was that, okay, now we want to talk to the firsthand people. You know, I think that's kind of just a thing that it's a way to honor the public people and tell them, look, here you go. Here's some firsthand people, and this is what we have to say. And yeah, some of it's going to be repeated from what I've even said tonight, um, devoid of any classified information that I cannot discuss tonight, and I won't discuss tonight. But that's, I think, where we're at right now. Is the public wants to hear from the firsthand people, and I think that Congress needs a little bit of a push and a little bit of fire back into the mix to try to get a little bit more of this pushed through their end, because they've got so many things on their plate. And I'm hoping that maybe the public push will help even Congress get people behind the next set of legislature and new NDAA or whatever's going to come. And I'd like to also offer that I've heard a lot more about what can and cannot be done at this point, and I think we're a lot closer to some better ideas on how we can tackle going forward without upsetting the program and what it's there for, upsetting public, upsetting the Congress and people that have been, playing the cover-up game forever. I think we have a lot better idea on how to move forward, and I'd like to talk at least in some meetings with some of those people and try to get to a better place.
And Mr. Sands, you consider yourself firsthand. Can you, I believe, you probably already said it. Can you restate how you're a firsthand witness? And I'll bow out here. Thank you so much for coming forward.
Yes, firsthand to me means you were either in the program or you had firsthand knowledge of the program. And what I mean by that is that it's not just the vanilla side of the program, but you had the in-depth knowledge of parts of what was going on. But to me, that's you were actually there. You actually saw. You actually were participating in that program. That's what a firsthand person is. Then you have the other cadre of firsthand in category that I would say is that somebody who does have like a close encounter that is also considered a first-hander.
Thank you, Mr. Sands. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you, Danny. If there's not anything else, Danny, we're gonna let you listen and bring up some other speakers. But for the time being, I think Average Chris was next. Go ahead, Chris.
Hey, Jason. So we talked earlier. So you were in signals intelligence. So I just what I would like to do, if that's okay, is build a timeline. Right. I know you had a long career in the Air Force. Again, thank you for your service. I
Yep.
appreciate it. From one airman to another. So from there, can you kind of give us a timeline? Because it seems like I think you said you got out in 2000. What was it? 2007. And so that's ironically when I got out. So from there, where did where did you kind of go? Because obviously you probably stayed in the intel community. And how did did you come across UAPTF and became a I guess employee or whatever you want to call it? How did that happen? Did they seek you out? Did you apply to them? How did that work?
In 2021, well, let's straighten out the timeline. So yeah, went through, retired in 2007, as I said. Then I became a contractor, DoD contractor, pretty much through and through. Where I was doing all kinds of different things, from software testing to intelligence, subject matter expert. Gosh, what else have I done? I helped DHS do some of their accreditation for some of the federal systems, or the Stennis Space Center, and worked for AFCENT during the Afghan era of things. Just various things where I was just using my skill sets the best I could. When I got involved in the task force, I ended up in working as an instructor down in Florida. And at that point in 2021, when it was kind of the task force was still building up the academia. The way that the forum is generated is that you can you have to, number one, be in the intel community, which I was. Even as an instructor, I'm still considered part of the IC because I'm teaching IC people. That's one of the criteria you have to have. And then on top of that, you just have to be able to contribute something. And I guess what I was able to contribute was my background and the knowledge of some of the Black World programs that we have, so that the task force was not wasting time on frivolous matters that, hey, this is one of ours. We don't have to worry about that. Let's move on to something else that's more conducive to the limited resources we have. So that's kind of where I got introduced to that. And that was in 2021 when I came across the forum and then became part of the forum. Was 2021.
Awesome.
Chris, if you
I
have a
noticed
follow up, go
you
ahead, and then we'll get to Courtney
yeah,
right after that.
just give me real quick. So Jason, you mentioned cadre and instructor. I'm assuming you said instructor to intel. Would that be instructor to military intelligence, or would that be just like within the government agencies?
Well, to joint cyberspace planners, that's who I was instructing, who are also part of the intel community, where you have to teach people how to take useful intelligence, create a proper plan, and execute it. that's kind of what I was doing, is mentoring people. I'd be going to all the combatant commands and teaching each of them. And that's what I did for about 10, 15 years.
So that's pretty weird coincidence, because AKA was naval cyber intelligence. Did you happen to teach him,
I
or
could have. I've met
did you?
thousands of students, honestly. And I get like when I worked over here at NSA for a while recently, that I run into people all the time. Hey, Jay, I'm like, I don't remember your name. I know your face, but jog my memory. So I could have met AKA, honestly. Um, so yeah, I'd have to look at his face. I'm better with faces than I am names.
Thanks, Jason. So we're gonna go ahead. I want to give Courtney. She just got up here, but she kind of broke all of this through Steve. So Courtney, if there's anything you want to say, go ahead. If not, we'll go to Tom.
Yeah, hey Jay. Fancy meeting you here. Um, I was on a space earlier today. It was kind of like a post-op of Steve's space yesterday, and I just want to say, I know I've said this to you personally, but I'm going to say it to the community here that I'm sorry that you felt, you know what I mean, pressured in any way to have to come out into the community, because I know how difficult it can be, for one. And there's a lot of conspiracy. I'm really glad that you're speaking about your direct experience in this space. It sounds like it's been good for you, and I'm really glad for that. Um, but I do know that my role in this kind of forced you or pressured you or, forced your hand to come out into this public way, which was not necessarily on your timing. So I just want to say to everybody that, this is real difficult, especially for me, having had a role in this, forcing him to come out before maybe he was ready. And I do hope that people in the community, it sounds like from what I've heard, are being respectful and kind and taking your story seriously. I think that's really good. And you know that you're my hero, and I respect you, and I'm glad you're doing this. I was surprised to hear you were in here tonight. Um, and I just hope people continue to have an open mind. People can believe what they want to believe, but in bringing Steve's story out, I just felt it was a privilege to both know both of you, for one, but also it wasn't just my private privilege. I always wanted to hear your story when it came out, and I'm sorry if it's come out too soon and it wasn't on your timing. That's all I want to say.
Yep.
Yo, huge props. This is like, to me, there's no whistleblowers coming out on UFO Twitter, and the fact that he's coming on before the fact and answering questions straight up from everybody in the community, huge respect there, and absolutely. And so
I
I
agree.
definitely appreciate
And
that
Yeah, for
honestly,
community
Courtney,
sure.
doing
that
this.
was like the most graceful way you could have said that. Like
Yep.
you kind of pushed all this, and the fact that you're kind of almost apologetic is just shows your nature.
Yeah.
Hearts in the chat for Courtney and Jason. This is amazing, guys. Thanks.
Well, thank you. And I just wanted to say back to Courtney that uh, I get it, but you knew that from the very first time we talked that I was going to go public this year. I just wasn't ready with the Dopser and everything else. And honestly, I've been, like I've told the audience here earlier tonight, that this is something that I've been contemplating quite deeply. And I just wanted to kind of put my voice out there now, even though I've got other people that might have other, talking venues for me later in the year. Regardless of all that, I wanted to give at least this forum, because I did respect some of the talk that was going on here, and that's why I joined it. And because I've literally heard, probably hundreds of other podcasts that I didn't want to be part of, but this one I did. So I
Good
guess.
for you. I mean, amen, brother. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of everybody in this circle and in this community here tonight that's being respectful. Twitter is not necessarily known in the UFO community for being respectful, so I think you're setting a precedent. I'm really glad to see it. I'm glad to be part of it. And I know I just had one small part in a much bigger picture. And I think everybody, if we all get on board the same way, we can do the same thing. And other people like Jay will come out on their own time, and they'll share with all of us. This is just a huge shot in the arm for everybody who's been waiting and heard your name and heard in context what a vital part of all this disclosure you are. So I'm just very proud. I'm just very proud of you and everybody here tonight. That's it.
Well, thank you. Yep. Well,
This sounds annoying, but honestly, like props to both of you guys. Go ahead, Jason.
no, I was just going to say that, yeah, I feel like I've always felt a huge burden to talk publicly about this. Not the classified parts, but just that we're not alone. And like I said, I really did heavily consider this several times going on other different shows that did have similar good talking going on, but I just didn't have my pre-publication squared away. So I couldn't legally do it. So this was my first opportunity to actually see a forum that was, really what I think is worthwhile. So I thank you guys from, I guess, prompting the whole thing and having a good discussion, because that's something I think needs to happen, is that we need to have a good, honest discussion. I don't care if you agree or disagree with me. It's up to you, every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth, to make their own decisions. But at least you'll hear from a guy that has been in the program and what I think about it all. And I think that's doing you guys justice, because you need it. And that's all I can offer, is that, here's what I think the truth is. Is the best that I understand it. That's all I can do.
Jason, based on your experience in the military, the government, whatever role you served, do you imagine there are other people in your same position who might want to come forward as well?
Yeah, that's always my hope. Like I said before, I've been walking this path alone for years now. I would dearly love, if we do have some hearings later this year, that I'm not alone. I'd really like not to be alone, but I'm prepared to do it alone. So if there's other people listening to this podcast and they're like me, and they can see that, yes, there's a smart way that you can come forward and talk about the parts that are okay to talk about, that, yeah, take some encouragement from David Grush and Graves and Fravor and Lou Elizondo and everybody else, and Chris Mellon and everybody else who's had a hand in this, and all the great journalists as well. And just come on, let's get through this. We can talk it through. Honestly, we're just trying to be, do the right thing with the information we have, because we know the difference between national security and whether or not we're alone. I mean, the two subject matters, they're not relatable, really. And we can talk about that part, that, yeah, we're not alone. Let's get that through at least. And
Can I
then
just,
that's it.
we do have a bunch of hands, Jason. Do you want to just delve into that real quick? I think that's fascinating. Like, where is actually, like, if there was a Venn diagram between national security and disclosure, which I think every human being has the right, almost a human right, to know what's really going on in order to, move the way they want to move in their lives. I mean, what's the crossover? Like,
Well, here you go. In my mind, it's very simple. I knew from day one, from being read in, that the NHIs were not classified at all. I mean, honestly, if you think about it, if there's another civilization out there and they are working with us, they're not going to care what classification guidance we use. They're going to come with their own set of laws, and they will probably likely want to be treated like an embassy wherever they're staying. Um, and that's kind of how they. I would imagine that's exactly how they run it, and that's what I was told how they run it. And so that part of it is totally unclassified. Now the classified part, yeah, that's the program. That's those are the weapon systems. Those are the technologies that we need to keep our national security alive. That will always be a classified thing. So just, you know, that's the veil. It's a very simple one in my mind. It's not really complex. It's just one or the other. You're either working on a weapon system and part of the program deals with NHIs, which is totally unclassified. That's what I know.
Well said. So let's go to David, and then we're going to go to Daniel after that.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Just want to thank Jason again. This is really great. And I didn't realize, I just gave Courtney a follow, that she was following me, and things are starting to click in my mind. So I really appreciate all you guys. And personally, I have already crossed the Rubicon where I believe you 100%, because a lot of the things I hear you discussing and other people discussing, you know, you don't have to believe me, but I've seen it. So I'm going to go ahead and dive into some NHI questions. So if you are not as familiar with the biologics and can't answer it,
Yeah.
that's understandable. But to your knowledge, these NHI, are they, you know, I don't want to use the word like flesh and blood, nuts and bolts, but like they are entities like us. Like the
Yeah.
way they get here, the way they're traveling may be utilizing some kind of technology or some kind of consciousness tech amalgam that goes beyond what we can do, but they are mortal and they can die and they are like us and they have a brain and they have a free will and they
Mm.
are coming and going from this planet with an agenda. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, and I'll never say that I'm an expert on how many races there are or what their biological makeup is. All I can say is that they don't look like us, and well, they're similar in humanoid shape, that they have a head, body, arms, legs in most cases. But I did not set any of them in front of me and do a DNA test on them, so I have no
Right.
idea.
Um, but have you seen pictures of them or video or anything like that?
I stood 3 feet from one,
Right. Okay. Alive or dead? Oh,
alive.
the blue one.
Yeah,
Right. And that's another thing I've heard. Like I know a lot of experiencers who have also seen the same thing. Like I kind of feel like whether you're in the program or not, contact has occurred. And so I heard you say that, everyone deserves the right to know that we are not alone. I mean, that alone is kind of paradigm shifting.
yeah.
But is there some hesitancy to kind of cross the line where you say, okay, we're not alone, but we're also being actively engaged by these things?
Yeah, that's where you got to be a little bit careful, because I don't know the depth of it. I don't know if parts of that are, um, if there's something nefarious going on between, us and them. Uh, I don't know. All I know is that sometimes they were in labs, sometimes they weren't. But that it was very tenuous if they were in the labs. That's all I know. In other words, they didn't want to be actually in the labs with us humans, because, it's just not something they wanted to be part of.
Right.
So I know that that's definitely something I have some inkling of, and that's about as far as I can go with it, is that they don't want to be helping us build weapon systems.
Why not?
I would say because, any kind of technology that we use, and being sort of a barbaric race, I would say that just from knowing our own nature, that they probably are leery of that. They wouldn't want us to have a technology that we might be able to wield against them. But I don't think that we would do that. I'm not saying that that's what we would do, but just that, that just like we would think that, hey, we don't want, one of our enemies to have, or some person that we're not sure is our enemy or not, having some kind of technology that they could use against us. It's just a security measure that it just.
Yeah, it's like the development of nuclear weapons could even affect them. Not even us so
Exactly.
much as
Yeah,
yeah.
because I'm not a scientist, but I know some of the power and the power generations and stuff like that. That it was pretty huge from what I heard. Because when we researched it, and some of the things that they were doing with gravity and other things, is just freaking awesome. What they can do. So
Fascinating.
yeah.
Okay, so let's go to Daniel, and then we'll go to Tom.
Okay.
Also, Jason, how much time do you have tonight? I want to be respectful.
Oh, that's Saturday night. I got all night, dudes.
Let's go.
Hell yeah.
And yeah, I'll let you know if I get tired.
God, Rob goes to bed 2 hours ago, but it's all good. I'm in for the long haul, guys.
Yeah.
Here we
Yeah,
go,
Rob,
Rob.
you better keep this going. You're not even recording it.
Yeah.
Fucking shit.
No. If I do record, nothing like this ever goes down. It never fails.
Maybe someone else is recording. Who knows? Go ahead, Daniel.
Man, I hope so, RPK.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate you sharing, Jason. So, my question is more about some historical incidents. Grush got some flack for mentioning the 1933 Italy incident, and that's something a lot of people have been critical about. I'm curious, in your correspondence or involvement with any of these things, if you can share maybe about some of the earliest recorded incidents, and for my own personal interest and research, I'm curious if maybe anything, whether it's fact, fiction, or folklore, regarding the 1897 Aurora airship incident had ever come up in any of your correspondence or investigation.
Aurora came up, but I at the time did not know whether they were just talking about the town of Aurora or whether it was something else. As for the earliest that I would know of or have pondered is the Roswell incident. I do believe that actually happened, that some decisions were made during that time frame that set up what is known as the program today. And that's it makes logical sense to me that that's what happened. And I think some mistakes, not mistakes, but during that Roswell incident era, like I said earlier, that it was during the McCarthy era, that people were very paranoid about communist influences in the United States. And we had, had good reason to do certain things and be very paranoid. But I think that has endured in the program culture for quite a long time, or longer than it should have in my mind. And that's what is really kind of slow balling all of the disclosure, is that you have a lot of people that quite literally have been there for their whole lives inside the program. I could have done the same, but I didn't end up sticking with it that long.
Wow. So
And
you have these people who maybe justifiably were paranoid against communist threats way back when, and
correct.
that same paranoia has then kind of transported over into the paranormal stuff.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, it kind of sounds like it makes sense to me too. Yeah, I would go with that.
Just a quick follow up there. When you had mentioned they had talked about Aurora, who was they, and what was the platform or media through which this interaction took place?
Well, while I was in the program, I had read a book and seen some stuff, notional artwork, I think in a Popular Mechanics magazine that went over Aurora, and actually related to some stuff I'd heard on Mission. And that's as far as I want to go with that. I don't want to get classified or talk about classified. But yeah, that's
enough said for Daniel, right? Nice.
Yep.
Love to hear from you, Daniel, too, man. Thanks, man. And Tom, we'll go ahead to you. Thanks, bro.
Thanks again, man. So I know there's a lot of people that are trying to get up here, so I'm going to ask this last question and then drop down so other people get a chance to speak. So something you said earlier really resonated with me, Jason, because as an experiencer myself, there was a good period of my own type of loneliness that I experienced, dating back to childhood and into my teenage years, early 20s, not being able to properly share the things I had experienced, even with loved ones. What can we do as these people that surround you in this space? Me, Astral, Money Penny, Kimball, everybody. What can we do to help you through this process?
Well, number one is, like Courtney was saying, is just be respectful of not only me, but the other whistleblowers that we're all, some of them are still in the program, are in a much more precarious place than I will ever be. And it's important that when the conjecture starts flying around, that you give them a chance to speak first. And if you haven't, and hopefully you do have an opportunity to talk to them like you're talking to me. So at least you're not going off of imaginary suppositions, things, at least you're talking to the person directly. And I know that's difficult right now because, I'm probably the only whistleblower that's come forward like this, other than David Grush and Graves. And, well, I guess there's been quite a few, actually, now that I think about it. But just be respectful of that. But the other thing you can do is that Congress really, if you really want to help, we need, and Congress needs a fire. They need to have the public support on this and the pressure to get something done, because they are trying to fight. The people that are on the side of disclosure in Congress need that sort of support. And they don't need, a bunch of crackpots coming forward. They need people that are well informed, and that's part of the reason I'm here, is to, help inform everybody, to come forward and just to say, yeah, we want to get this done. We started the NDAA. We've heard the Arrow report. We don't agree with it, or we do agree with it. But we want to get to the bottom of this, because I can tell you, where is all this money going? Congress can't tell you. Maybe certain people around Pentagon and other places might be able to, but that's the travesty of it all, is just that there's a part of this that at least the oversight needs to be there, and that's not going to happen without public support. And the other thing is just, you guys, now that you've heard me and listened to what I've had to say tonight, is just take that, and if you're in other podcasts, just be as respectful as I have been with everybody here, that, yeah, this is my story, and, don't embellish it. Just tell it like it is. Try to be as factual as you can. Be educated about it. Because the one thing I've found very frustrating is there's a lot of different people with a lot of different opinions out there, and sometimes it's totally off base. And I hate seeing that. I would love to be able to give better context, and I think that's one of the things I'll do now that I can go public, is to try to give some of that context. So you have me now to ask those questions of, and I would hope that you would use me as a resource to do that. And as other whistleblowers might come forward, do the same with them, so that we're at least getting to a new level with the information we have, instead of all the conjecture and I don't know. So that's what I would say you guys can help me with.
Jason, thanks again, man. Just deeply, deeply appreciate it. I followed you. Hopefully, I can get a follow back, and I truly, truly hope that sometime soon we can speak again. And just from the bottom of my heart, I know I speak for a lot of people here. Thank you for what you're doing. I think you're a badass. I think you're extremely brave, and I hope that decades from now in history looks back at you and Grush and everybody as heroes, man, because you're telling your truth, you're telling your
It
story,
will. We know,
and it means a lot to
Tom. We know,
everybody here.
Tom. You and I, a lot of us in here know this is real. So
We
history
know,
books will
yeah.
definitely. He's in
Well,
the
yeah.
history books. That's settled.
Well, yeah, and
Yeah, you're right.
that's the one thing I've always found kind of like, good grief, I really wish all of you could know and have seen what I've seen and experienced it for yourself, and then there'd be no doubt. But I know that hasn't happened, and it probably likely won't for quite some time, unless the NHIs themselves want to say, hey, here we are, what do you want to say? But until that time happens, yeah, we're still going to be stuck with, people that'll listen to people like me and just think I'm full of it.
Yeah, I get the feeling. Open contact is like a daunting. Like, it would be great in a lot of ways, but I don't know. We're definitely not ready for open contact. I don't think, but let's see. I don't
Yeah,
even
I
know.
agree.
I think Tech Tweets or JJust was next.
Yeah, Tech. What's up, man?
Hey guys, great space, and Jason, thank you so much for coming forward and for what you're doing. I just have
No
a
problem.
few. I have a few quick questions for you. The first was, could you possibly comment on the Department of Naval Intelligence involvement in these programs?
Yeah, I'd say out of all the different agencies and intel organizations, the DNI has been probably more of an honest broker than literally everybody else. Everybody else seems to be kind of absent um, in trying to support any kind of an effort over the past decade, really.
Excellent.
So that's who I would. That's so I'd give kudos to the DNI.
Okay, a couple more. Are there any specific details of the NHI craft in terms of propulsion, origin, when, where, and when they were recovered, that any of the contacts within the programs have divulged to you that you
Well,
can share?
yes. Well, I don't want to give away any classified information, but
Sure.
I would tell you, and I've been asked this before, that the pace of retrievals has been about one or two craft every 3 to 5 years, ever since the 1950s.
Okay,
Wow.
that's crazy. And a little bit further to that, are there confirmations that the propulsion methods of these craft are indeed anti-gravitationally based?
There are a variety of different types. As you can imagine, if there are other civilizations out there, just like we can have a hydrogen powered car or gas powered or electric, they likely have other forms of propulsion. Most of the ones I know of or had heard of are electromagnetic in nature or some form of it in one way, shape, or another, to
Excellent.
counteract gravity.
Okay. And then just another quick question. Can you comment, or did you have any knowledge on Edward Teller's involvement in these programs along and or the Department of Energy's involvement?
Yes, I do know DOE does work some of the security around the area. Um, I don't know about Teller. You'd have to tell me about him and what you're getting at with that, and maybe I do understand a little bit of it, but I may just not remember the name.
Yeah, he's like the father of the H bomb. Big. He was a huge involvement in the early DOE. And there's
Oh,
just and the whole UFO lore. There's lots of tales and stories about him being involved in the program from the beginning.
yes, I would say that yes. The DOE was always very close to the area and everything else where everything was homegrown. So I would like, well, yeah, thermonuclear powering of you know things is something that they've been working on, and we still work on. And I would say that there'd probably be a very close relationship between DOE and the program. And I used to go up range all the time, and sometimes they would be doing nuclear tests, and that was DOE telling us to shut down the range for the day so that they could do their test. And there was like even a big crater we used to drive by on the Tonopah test range. Had a big crater or an area of sand that's where they used to detonate stuff.
Wow. Thank you, Jason. Estimate. Go ahead, and then we'll go to Neanderthal.
Yeah, so just a few points. So 1 to 2 craft every 5 years, that would average out to, I want to say, a little under 30 craft that would be in our possession. Just wondering if that would be a ballpark number.
Yeah.
Two, what was the impetus for? Because you said the program started around 1954-ish, right? Or
Yeah.
that's when the paperwork went back to. Do you know what was the impetus for that program to be started at that particular time? Um,
Yes.
and one
Well,
more after that.
I would say it was just the retrievals. That was what it was. Whether it was from a known adversary or not, that was what the program was stood up for. So it was very much related to actual wartime things that had taken place. And then it was a convenient place to start doing some of this other exotic crash retrieval stuff because it's a really, you're doing kind of the same thing. You're reverse engineering, you're capturing stuff, you're researching the stuff. It just was a very cool workhouse for everybody to throw everything underneath.
And the other question would be, because what we've been frequently hearing is that this is so stovepipe and compartmentalized, at least today, that you have one person working on something and they have no idea that it's related to another project that is under the umbrella of something like this. So my question would be like, what was the mechanism by which you were able to overhear the scientists and engineers talking about this, and what were their thoughts, from what you could gather? Thank you.
Well, I was actually monitoring their telecommunications, is what my mission set was. So you'd hear exactly what, sometimes people are, as much as you tell somebody that you need to talk on an encrypted line, people are just lazy. And I hate to say it, but being in the business I was for the Air Force for many, many years, that pretty much everybody in every place we went to got some kind of a problem that you could use as a vulnerability. And that it was something that we came out to try to fix. So that's how I found out about this. Now, what they were saying, the scientists were saying, is like I was saying before, is that there was a batch of stuff that was just, things that you would find kind of normal for a program like that, reverse engineering of adversarial things that people from or equipment from our adversaries that we were reverse engineering, trying to understand. And then there was the cadre of the exotics and stuff that the scientists were just clueless about and were finding very difficult to work with because of the stovepiping between programs and the strangeness of what they were looking at and trying to test.
I'm sorry, I should have been a little bit more specific. What, where the notions of hostility come from in terms of what this might be or what the intentions? Because I'm sure motivations, like once you establish that there's a there, the motivation part is a huge part of the conversation. And I think I heard you say that a couple of people thought that there were some hostile intentions from
Oh,
whatever it was.
yeah. And I think that, in other words, the program was started from a serendipitous retrieval. So I think the NHI contact was also not expected, and the NHIs themselves didn't want to do it, but or participate in a program with us, but they ended up doing so, thinking that this might be the best way forward. Um, because here it was, we actually had some of their material and some of the biologics, and I think that's what sparked it. So that was the motivation initially, was just kind of like, we accidentally found it, we accidentally retrieved it, and then the NHI show up on the scene. They say, hey, we know something crashed here. Where's our stuff? Are you going to give it back? And the response was, well, let's barter about that. And I think that's how it all kind of grew.
Thank you, James. And Estimate as well. Check out Estimate of the situation. They've got a Kickstarter going on that's definitely worth it. So we got Neanderthal next, and then we're gonna go to JJS after that, and then Darcy.
Hey, thanks. Great space. And I'm coming in a little late, so I apologize if somebody else has brought the stuff I'm going to ask about. Just have a couple of quick ones. So I heard you say earlier that about why you're coming out now and stuff. Like you mentioned that the stars are kind of all aligning to do this sort of a thing right now. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that.
Oh, yeah. That's just where I've seen Congress wanting to get involved, that the DNI and the task force and Arrow all have been doing, their due diligence to try to get some answers. And that's what I mean by the alignment of all these different things coming together. I've never seen so many things aligning all on trying to get to the answers we want from this. So we've heard from Arrow now, and apparently Sean Kirkpatrick and his analysts are looking at the data, and they think one way about it. But I'm also hearing that there's some blowback from that report as well. And honestly, I don't blame other people from kind of bagging on the fact that it was kind of sloppily written and maybe a little too cavalier in its assumptions that it made. And it certainly flies in the face of at least my going to Arrow and what I said to Sean Kirkpatrick myself. Um, so I think we're in a place now to where we either go forward with this or we don't. And I really would like to see the celestial bodies continue to align and continue through, because I don't think we're going to have another generation for quite a while where this is an opportunity for all of us to, take the what we have now for synergy and just push this through and finally get to a place where everybody's either placated and hey, we really are alone, or hey, yeah, there's NHI. I know that we have there are NHI, but that's for our society to come to grips with that. I mean, that's what I mean by aligning of the whole thing, is that I think this is the only generation that can get the answer that I've seen since I've been alive.
Wow. So, real quick, Jason, you're not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. But if you were the way forward, right? You said we need to go forward. How would you go forward, knowing what you know?
Well, I have suggested that, if there are people that are in the program and or people in the private industry that is helping the program, now's the time to come forward. And there's already a process in place to discreetly come forward if you have UAP material, biologics, whatever, what have you, or even just information that you wish to share. I'm one of the people that can help you connect with the right Congress people and senators and whoever you want, and it'll be handled very discreetly. And because I know that some of the people in the program would like to do that. Now, if they want to do a public statement, I can go that route too. And there's, David Grush can point them in the right direction too. The Soul Foundation has a lot of really great people there too that can help. We all have a lot of really great networked resources to help folks do the right thing. So, yeah, that's what I would like to see happen.
I was awesome. Go
Hey,
ahead.
Kimball, real quick, if I could sneak the last part in. I was wondering if you could, Jason, talk about at all anything to do with the metallic spheres that everyone talks about seeing, even that were in the initial Arrow reports and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and anything to do with like their purpose and stuff.
I would say that if there is some indication, I would say, not from my own personal experience. Let me say that this is just my opinion. From what I have heard, from what I believe are legitimate reporting, is that there's a lot of drones being flown around because of the danger of a crash. There seems to be directed energy weapons that affect the UAP. So I think if you were a smart NHI, you wouldn't have people on board anymore, just because you wouldn't want to endanger your own people. Just like we wouldn't want our own air crews to endanger themselves. So the orbs, I would say, they serve a multitude of different missions. There are some that are research. There are some that are in interplanetary or otherwise, where they can come and they provide a conveyance from one location to another to get someplace they want to go. Then there's other ones that are just maybe even recreational, because intelligence races tend to want to be entertained. We love our football games. Who wouldn't want to come to the zoo known as Earth and observe some of the stupidity that goes on here? So some of them might actually be coming here for entertainment value, for all I know. It's kind of fun to play with that. But I'm just saying that it could be a lot of different reasons. But just about everything you can imagine you'd want to be on another planet, that may be why they're here, and that's what those orbs are about.
Thank you, Jason. So JJS was going to be next. Non-Credible's phone is about to die, and he's a solid researcher I trust. So we're going to let him go ahead real quick.
I'm good with that. Go non-credible.
I have just a quick question for you, Jason. Would maybe I have seen you trying to talk some sense into Richard Giordano on the Goof On show last year, and it just went over everybody's head except mine?
Did I do that? Is that what you're asking?
I was watching, I watched the David Grush interview premiere on the Richard Giordano show, Goof On, and then there was
that was me. Yeah, that was me. I used
okay, screen name Ted at the time, I think.
Yeah, that's my dad's name, and it's also my middle name.
I got you. Cool, man. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't like, taking crazy pills because your voice was very, very familiar. But I heard you there that day. And I appreciate that. I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't heard you there that day in part.
Yeah,
Appreciate
at
that,
that
friend.
point, the reason I came forward on that one was to defend David Grush because there were some things being said that just weren't true. So,
like I said, I think you were trying to talk some sense into Rich. I heard your sense that you were putting out there.
I told you
yeah,
guys non-credible was solid.
Yo, we need to go back and get that shit down.
Unfortunately, it was only on
That
this
was good.
channel, Rebellious Unknown, for a while because Rich, like the Rich version, got striked down because like News Nation.
Hey, I can probably. I may can reach out to Lynn and get a copy of that. Not credible, no big deal.
That would be cool.
You better post that,
yeah,
Rob. JJS, go ahead.
Back channel that.
yeah, but that was me. I was trying to defend David Grush at the time because he's been a really good, friend of mine all the way through this from the start, and I just was really upset to hear some of the stuff that was being thrown around.
Yeah, I bet you were probably looking at him and seeing what was going on pretty closely with when he was coming out and getting feedback and all that shit.
Yeah,
right?
actually, last year it was the same week. It was kind of weird because I was talking to him on the phone, and I was just like, "Hey, Dave, I'm thinking about going public, but I'm not ready for it yet." And he's like, "Yeah, that's kind of weird. I'm thinking about that too." And then he actually did, and I was like, "Wow, cool. You're my hero," And so here I am this year, following in his footsteps. So I think it's appropriate.
Darcy, what's up, man?
Yo, oh my God. This is a momentous occasion. Jason, thank you so much for stepping up and out like this. It's pretty surprising. And I totally agree with like Courtney and other folks. It is the shot in the arm that we needed right now.
Yeah.
I'm a fellow researcher, as many people in this room are, documentarian. I'm excited to see your testimony included in the new documentary that James Fox is releasing.
Mm-hmm.
But couple questions for you. First of all, if you can elaborate, what was the impetus for you coming forward so early? I think Courtney kind of touched on that. And yeah, go ahead, and then I'll just ask the other quick questions if you don't mind.
Well, I guess to add on to what I was saying before is just that I've been working towards going public for probably about a year and a half, all told. Tonight was kind of something I've been thinking about for quite a while because I've been seeing the interest is still there, and the conversation was really very good at the start here on this particular podcast, and I really appreciated it. And I thought, well, this is kind of what the kind of forum that I wanted to have, because you guys and the public really need to start hearing the, I guess, informed version of everything, rather, because I felt so bad over the past year hearing some of the podcasts, and I'm just like, oh, gee, I really wish I could go and talk, but I just didn't have all of my ducks lined up to go public yet. And I would just be like, oh, wow, that's just really off base, and they should be talking this way about it. And that's one of the reasons, that's really what I'm doing here. So to add to what I said before, is that's another big motivator, is just that I really feel like I want to give some context, at least from my point of view, and I'll at least give you my opinion as to what I think I was hearing and the things that I had experienced. And at least you'll hear it from a firsthand person. And I'll give you my best shot. I'll be as honest as I can. And that's all I can offer you guys. And that's another big motivator. But I think just that one thing, that if I was never in the program, I would appreciate somebody like myself coming forward to help at least give some context. So that's another big motivator for me coming forward tonight.
Great. And kudos for you for standing up for David Grush in the middle of the troll posse over at Goofon's radio bullshit show. He's a total piece of garbage, in my opinion. But
I thought it was humorous. It was very, very humorous to me. But at the same time, they did have some good points as well. But yeah.
okay. Anyways, the other question I had for you: you said you stood within feet of a non-human intelligence. Was this like your typical gray? And
No, it was.
my second question is, you said 1954 was really when this kicked off. Were the NHIs involved from the beginning, or did they come in years later or before the program?
I think that it's possible that our government had some previous contacts, but I do believe that in 1954 that the program was stood up officially, and has been striving forward ever since. So as for the person I met in the desert that was 3 feet away from me, he to me, his skin looked the same as what an albino would have, very, very pale white. And he was a little bit shorter than me. I stand about 6 foot. He was a few inches shorter, maybe 5'6", 5'7". So I had a very good look at him. I think people have asked me about it before, and I would say he probably looks more like a tall white than he does anybody else, but the ears are something that really threw me off. But you'll hear more about that when James Fox's film comes out later this year. And by the way, he is trying he's working his butt off right now trying to get that film finished up.
Yeah, James is
So,
awesome. Jason, real quick, just on the points you just made. So even someone who's into the topic like myself, when I hear people make delineations between like races, between the Nordics or the tall whites, that is like, wait, what? And I guess just given your background and like your experience in these departments, can you shed any light on maybe where your opinions or your knowledge, I guess, comes from?
well, just during the interview process, there was a lot of pointed questions about my encounter in the desert with this individual, and I'm never going to claim to be an expert and have like a catalog of exactly what all the different races are that have made contact with the human race are. All I can tell you is what I've seen and experienced myself. So this individual had that albino looking skin, had a blue under that skin. It was a bluish kind of a tinge. He had earlobes, but they were conformed to his skull, so they weren't sticking out at all like ours do. And his eyes were twice the size of ours. And the corners of his eyes were probably about where our temples are. That's how big they were. And the irises were similarly large and very dark, to the point where you couldn't tell the difference between pupil or iris.
Right, but
So,
what's why do you describe that as a tall white as opposed to a Nordic, or like your knowledge on those delineations or the grays or the ebens or whatever, where does that come from?
Well, there is two sources, and that is one is my own, listening to telecommunications within the program. The tall whites were mentioned and the grays. At that point, though, I had not seen what a tall white or a gray looked like. So I assumed that this person that I had met was white. So I assumed he was a tall white, not knowing exactly what they look like and not having, been around them all my life. I just didn't know. So I called him a tall white. But then during the interviewing process, somebody else said he could have been a hybrid, and I don't know why they said that, but that's something they postulated.
I've heard that
So,
as well. It sounds like you're describing a hybrid from what I've heard.
yeah, and it could have been, for all I know, because I had no other context in seeing an individual that looked like that. So
Thank
yeah,
you, Jason. These are some real questions, and it's awesome that you're just here for it. Like, seriously, like we're getting
Yeah.
past all the X-Files music. Just go ahead.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. I hope we can get them all answered. They talk about a galactic federation. It's in the lore. You had Haim
I don't
Ashad.
hear him.
Can you not hear me?
No, he can't hear you,
Might have
Just.
to jump back out and back in.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna go to the Juan next while Jay just drops out and comes back.
Hey, I've got a couple. I've got a couple of questions I'd like to come
Oh
around
yeah,
to
I'm
at some
sorry. Go
point
ahead.
too. But
By all means, go
no.
ahead.
Everyone else, go ahead by all means. I'll come back around.
Can you drop
Yeah,
me
just keep
down
it
and
everyone to like just like
Yeah,
one
it
or
was.
two
Yeah,
questions
it was a couple.
respectfully.
It was a
I
couple
can
brief
hear
ones.
him
I
now.
was.
I can hear you
Yeah.
now.
Oh yeah, I wasn't the one speaking. It was Jay Jess that was speaking. She dropped down. She's going to come back up. I was just
Okay.
going to ask you if you had any affiliation to Elizondo and Chris Mellon, and also why do you think it is that the Navy has carried most of the research on this, and the Air Force seems to remain silent about it?
I would say because of Lou Elizondo. He's my hero. I've told him that many times, and he's still my hero. The affiliation with Mellon and the other folks have been people that have ended up in my network over time, that people, that were on the inside who had been part of the task force, that the word got out, and people started contacting me, and I've gotten to know them. And I've yet to run into anybody that is not a stellar person or similarly a hero in my book. They've all done great things to try